So, wir sind live. Okay. Hello and a warm welcome to our online seminar from RED to CRA, Navigating Europe's New Cybersecurity Compliance Requirements. Thanks for joining us. It's great to have you here. So my name is Patrick. I'm Senior Sales Manager here at ONEKEY. We're going to start with a quick intro before I hand over to Philip. Philip is a very pleasant colleague and a true expert in his field. He is a cybersecurity compliance consultant at ONEKEY. Philip will explain how to navigate from RED to CRA, including what's mandatory now under CRA and RED, how to prepare for topics like risk management, security by design, vulnerability handling, secure updates, SBOM-based documentation, and how ONEKEY can accelerate the fulfilling of your compliance obligations. To ask questions, please simply click the question button in the bottom right corner. So, of course, product cybersecurity and compliance are important, but what are the main drivers? The question can be answered by focusing on three main topics: technology, cyber threats, and regulation. Regarding technology, we can see that the number of connected devices is growing at an incredible pace. It is estimated that as many as 40 billion devices could be in use this year. A really strong argument for implementing robust cybersecurity measures. And when it comes to cyber threats, we are no longer just dealing with lone hackers. Many attacks are carried out by highly organized, often state-sponsored cybercriminal networks. And the global number of cybersecurity events continues to rise sharply. And third, regulation. In response to the escalating risk, governments and international bodies are ramping up their efforts. The EU Cyber Resilience Act is one regulation in particular that is set to become a major force in shaping the future of cybersecurity across industries. So you may be asking yourself, what steps must we take to prepare for this new era? So first, you need to understand what's inside your software. It all starts with a complete inventory of the software components used in your product. Second, the software bill of materials, or SBOM, is the foundation for achieving cybersecurity for your product. An SBOM is essential for effectively managing vulnerabilities and ensuring compliance throughout your complete organization. Second step to prepare: analyze and continuously monitor vulnerabilities. So in order to identify all the symbols, functions, patterns that have been compiled into your software, you can perform a binary analysis of your firmware to identify known and unknown vulnerabilities. And in step 3, it is essential that you evaluate the compliance maturity level of your firmware. Because to comply with the relevant regulations, the necessary technical and organizational checks must be carried out. So the main goal of the ONEKEY platform is to maximize automation and save you time and resources. In fact, ONEKEY reduces the time required for testing from approximately 5 days to just 30 minutes. It automatically generates an SBOM directly from the binary image, so no source code, network, or device access is required. ONEKEY continuously and fully automates the monitoring of your firmware for vulnerabilities 24/7. In CVE management, we can filter up to 90% of time-wasting noise and false positives with just a few clicks. We rely on 60 highly effective security checkers to detect zero-day threats, unknown vulnerabilities, and to carry out compliance check to see if your product meets specific regulatory requirements that only takes a single click. So the result of your analysis are compiled in a single comprehensive report that can be downloaded for your notified body. So whether you prefer our user-friendly SaaS interface or wish to integrate ONEKEY into your system, our API-first approach gives you the flexibility to easily integrate with your existing workflows or CI/CD pipeline. So we are continuously refining our automated analysis process to help you navigate the complexities of product certification more easily. The ONEKEY Compliance Wizard streamlines and simplifies the entire process. In this effort, we work closely with leading notified bodies such as Bureau Veritas and TÜV. And through the ONEKEY platform, you can perform self-assessments aligned with the EU Cyber Resilience Act, the IEC 62443, the RED EN 18031, and many more. So as you can see, we automate wherever possible, and we can add value. So, however, when automation reaches its limits, our expert service take over, which covers high quality pen testing, in-depth code reviews, traditional consulting, and especially right now and very intensely requested, our readiness and gap assessments against regulatory standards such as RED and the CRA, for example. With that, that's it from my side. So let's move on to the main part. But before handing over to Philip, I would like to kindly remind you to send us your questions via the question tab. So Philip, please, the stage is yours.
Thank you very much, Patrick. And welcome everyone to this seminar. I'm very happy to see so many of you joining today. And I'm very honored to present the RED and CRA journey, compliance journey to you. So without further ado, let's move on. Why are cybersecurity regulations important? Well, in the European economy, their mission is to safeguard the economy from rising cyber threats and growing cyber attacks. As we all see in the news every day, not only the number of devices is growing, but also the number of threats is growing. And in order to protect networks and users from those threats, the European Union decided to put out regulations in order to make cybersecurity mandatory. RED, for example, so the RED, Radio Equipment Directive, requires that radio equipment does not harm networks, prevents misuse of resources, and compromise personal data. So those regulations are important in order to prevent fraud and abuse. And with that, the devices shall not be exploited in order to cause economic or service disruptions. And with this being important for the European Union, also important for companies like yours, are cybersecurity compliance initiatives. So being non-compliant, why is it so important for you? Because being non-compliant is a high risk. If companies fail to comply, they not only face threats like I just mentioned, but they also face regulatory penalties and fines. And those can be very heavy and very impactful. And beyond that, non-compliance can also lead to recalls or sales bans from the authorities and market surveillance on the EU market. So to put it in short, cybersecurity compliance is not only a regulation or not only a regulation topic, it has become a market access barrier for companies. And in order to make this a bit more clear, I would say, let's start with the RED as a starting point. From August 2025, this regulation is already fully in force. So basically, any device that is affected by the RED and is not conform with the requirements from this regulation is non-compliant and faces the risks of being recalled or banned from market access. What devices are affected? It affects internet-connected radio equipment. I will come to that point, what exactly an internet-connected radio equipment is later in a few slides. Let's talk a bit about the requirements. There are three essential requirements, basically, which are derived from the Article 3.3 of the Radio Equipment Directive, and this is the sub-article D with network protection, E for personal data protection, and F for fraud prevention. And all these requirements which the manufacturer has to fulfill for the product are written down in the EN 18031 standards family. So how do you determine if your device is affected? First of all, you have to decide if your device has a wireless interface, for example, Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, or Zigbee. And then you need to determine if your device connects itself to the internet. This is either directly or indirectly. And if that is not the case, then you have to check if your device is able to use internet protocol. So it's not about if this function is implemented as an active function, but if an attacker that compromises your device is able to use, for example, TCP IP protocols in order to communicate over a network interface. And if this is the case, then your device has to be conform according to Article 3.3d and therefore needs to fulfill the requirements of EN 18031-1, which is the first part of the EN 18031 family. Secondly, we have the personal data protection. It follows the same decision flow as 3.3, so DORA. So actually, the same family of devices is affected by this, but it has some additional requirements. If the device is either storing or processing personal data and traffic or location data, or if it's a child's toy and intended exclusively for childcare, or if it is a wearable. And the definition of wearable is it's either worn on, strapped to, or hung from the human body. Then it's affected by the second sub-article of the RED, and you have to make sure that it follows the requirements from the 18031-2 additionally to the -1. And last but not least, we have fraud prevention. Again, this also is for internet connected radio equipment, and it is about payment processing or processes and payment transactions which allow money transfer, monetary value, or virtual currency transfer. And those are required to fulfill the requirements from EN 18031-3, additionally to the other relevant standards. What are those standards covering? Well, it is pretty technical. We have some, I can only give a quick overview here, but we have common known topics, which are, for example, access control measures or authentication measures, which you need to fulfill. Then we also have secure update measures and secure communication measures, which require most of the time cryptography and some others. Then let's move on to the next regulation, which is the CRA. It will foreseeable replace or extend the radio equipment directive. It comes into full application in December 2027. This is still quite a long time, but there is another deadline which will be earlier, and that will be the reporting obligation, which will be from today roughly 1 year coming into force. So in September 2026, affected manufacturers, vendors and distributors will have to make sure that they can fulfill the reporting and incident handling obligations being enforced from then on. The CRA covers products with digital elements. I will describe more thoroughly what this means in the next slide. And it extends the requirements across the full product lifecycle. So as you have seen before, the requirements were more technically, then those requirements in the CRA will not be only technically, but also organizational requirements with processes and procedures in mind. And for that, the European Union will publish harmonized standards, which are currently in progress and are currently created. And when they will arrive and what they are exactly, you will also see on the next slides. So what is a product with digital elements? This is the definition taken from the CRA Article 3. And a product with digital elements means a software or hardware product and its remote data processing solutions, including software or hardware components being placed on the market separately. That's a addition sentence, but the first sentence is interesting. So basically, a product with digital elements is anything that has digital components and connections. And it processes data, it transfers data, or it stores data, and is in some kind being implemented in a digital process, also with the remote data processing solutions in mind. With the CIA, while the CIA also or mainly describes what is in scope, it also describes what is out of scope. So we have some products which are taken out of scope in the CRA. Those are first of all non-commercial and free open source software, which has no commercial intent and are mostly community-driven projects. The European Union realized that it's a way too high burden and would kill any open source community if they would pose those requirements on them, and therefore they are excluded. Secondly, there are cloud solutions and software as a service, which are not part of the device remote data processing solution. This is important. So standalone cloud solutions, standalone software as a service is taken out of scope in the CRA, but cloud solutions which are part of a remote service which does data processing for hardware, for example, they are in scope because they fall under the definition of a product with digital elements. Then we, of course, have products which are already covered by other regulations. Mainly those are medical devices, vehicles, aviation and maritime devices. And of course, as usual, we also have national security and military devices excluded as well. Let's take a look at the harmonized standards. I promise to go into detail with that. There will be 41 standards, which are mainly split into two categories, which are the horizontal standards. Horizontal standards are standards which apply to all products. So they're pretty generic and more or less describing common processes and best practices when it comes to cybersecurity. For example, we have generic security requirements, we have principles of cyber resilience, of vulnerability handling, and many more. So those are examples for the horizontal standards. And vertical standards are focusing on products which fall into a special classification in the CRA for products, product classification, which are important products class 1. Those are, for example, password managers, browsers, or even CM systems. Why are harmonized standards so important? Why do they matter for you as a maybe affected company or manufacturer? Well, first of all, they give clear guidance. Harmonized standards are designed in such a way that you can read them and understand them and take your time in order to fulfill them. And they also have mechanisms like, for example, the decision tree, where it's pretty clearly stated what your device has to fulfill in order to be compliant. And they also make self-assessment possible. So when you're using harmonized standards, and if your product allows it, or the type of product allows it, then you can benefit from the presumption of conformity, which means you are having a product which falls under the possibility of being self-assessed, because it is in one of two groups, and that is the first group, the default products and important class 1 products. Those are the classifications. If they are falling into this, if your product is falling into this category, you can use the self-assessment and benefit from the presumption of conformity in order to apply the requirements yourself and prepare everything for maybe an authority or market surveillance knocking on your door and asking for documentation and proof that you really followed the harmonized standards. In another case, this is not possible, and that is when your product is a product of important class 2 or critical. In that case, you will have to utilize a notified body in order to go through a third-party assessment or a certification process. Then we take a short look at the CRA timeline. We are in September 2025 now. The CRA is already in force since December last year, but there is some time frame while the companies have the possibility to prepare themselves for the CRA requirements, which is now. And there are important milestones, 3 of them. The first one being in June next year, where certification will become possible. So the work which I just mentioned before, for the second group of products, being important products class 2 and critical products, can go through the certification process. Then in September next year, so roughly 1 year from now, the reporting obligations will start. And in order to be able to report incidents and exploited vulnerabilities, you will have to be able to identify incidents and also handle them. So therefore, there's a bit of work before that can be fulfilled. So 1 year from now is a good time frame to start with this obligation. And in December 2027, the full application of the CRA will be in effect. When it comes to the harmonized standards, pretty short before the deadlines arise, the standards will be published. For example, in August 2026, so 1 month before the reporting obligation comes into effect, horizontal standards for cyber resilience and vulnerability handling, which are related to this reporting obligation, will be published if everything goes well. After that, in October next year, the vertical standards will be published, and roughly 2 months before the CRA gets into full force, all horizontal standards will be published. This shows us one main thing: you should not wait. You should not wait for the standards to come out, because the time between the publishing of the standards and the deadline of the obligations will be so short that you will have no possibility to fulfill them in that time frame. So if you don't want your product to be non-conform, you should, my recommendation is to start now. Why is this? Because the CRA not only describes what you need to do as a company, it also describes which penalties and enforcement possibilities it gives to authorities and the market surveillance. And we have a distinguishment between the severity of non-compliance. So if you're non-compliance with certain annexes or articles, namely the Annex 1 and Article 13 and 14, which are the main, which focus mainly on the real implementation requirements, you have a fine of up to 15 million euros. Then we have the non-compliance with any other regulation or any other obligation in the CRA, which is up to 10 million euros. And if you deliver wrong information to notified bodies or authorities, you face 5 million, up to 5 million euros of fines. But the worst part about it is, I think, this one, which is that authorities can enforce recalls and bans. So this shows the CRA is not just paperwork. It is really a business risk, and the authorities really gain teeth with this regulation. And again, it is a market access barrier. Then let's take a look at the CRA topics. While RED focuses on technical measures, CRA is a bit broader. It extends compliance from specific technical measures to life cycle-wide processes. What this means, I will show you in this little flyover. So first of all, we have continuous risk management. This means you need to have an ongoing identification, assessment, and treatment of risks across the entire product lifecycle. Then there is security by design and default, which means integrating security measures from the very beginning of the development of a new product or an existing product, and ensuring that those products are delivered with the most secure configuration. And if the product is being reset by the user, that it also returns to this most secure configuration by default. Also, we have vulnerability management and supply chain security. This describes the processes to identify, handle, and disclose vulnerability, and also have control of third-party and open source components in order to make sure that your supply chain is secure. Incident handling and reporting describes processes to detect, manage, and recover from incidents. Otherwise, you would not be able to report them. And you also have to make sure that you timely report those incidents to authorities and users if required. Secure updates and patch management means that you have to have timely and free secure updates. Free is important and also separated from feature updates, because sometimes customers hesitate to install a security update because it would change the feature set of their device, and therefore you need to separate those both. And also you have to make sure that the mechanisms for distribution are safe, and this you have to make sure. Also, you have to make sure that you have patch management throughout the whole product life cycle until the end of life of that product. You need to provide clear user instructions and security informations to your customers, and also have update policies, support periods, and guidance on secure use of your product. And last but not least, the all-beloved point of documentation is very important for the proof of conformity of your product. So a comprehensive technical documentation in order to undergo the right conformity assessment procedure is important, so that you can demonstrate and prove to authorities that your product is really following the regulation and is being compliant with CRA or RED. Then let's take a look at how to become compliant. I like to take a look at those things from the end on, so going backwards from the goal. And what is your goal in the end as a manufacturer? You want to put a CE label on your product. That is basically what you want to do. And in order to do that, in order to be able to do this, you need to sign an European Declaration of Conformity. And in order to be able to sign that, because you're not signing just any paper without knowing what's going on, you need to make sure that your product is compliant. And you do this by going through the assessment procedure of, for example, for default and class 1 important products, through the self-assessment. What do you need in order to go through the assessment procedure is documentation. You need to have the documentation over the measurements you implemented. And of course, in order to have the documentation ready for those, you need to implement them. But what do you need to implement? You might understand it until here, but what exactly do you need to do? And in order to know what you need to do, you need to make sure that you have an action plan. And this is a point where ONEKEY can help you. As my colleague already mentioned, we do also consulting. And we have the ONEKEY readiness assessment process, which is mainly providing 4 benefits. And the first one being knowledge. So our intention is it that our customers understand what they are facing, what they need to do, and what they need to fulfill. And we provide this knowledge or transfer this knowledge to our customers and to each and every stakeholder of that customer's product in order to make sure that everyone is on the same page of the book. And we do this by our introductory workshop. This is the first phase of our readiness assessment, which will be followed by the gap analysis and the reporting. So what is this? This is mainly separated in 3 parts. It is about the documentation gathering. So we gather documents from you which are relevant to cybersecurity requirements of your product. And we enter an interview phase where we talk to you and your stakeholders in order to make sure to get the most realistic status quo of your processes related to the CRA requirements. After completing the documentation gathering and the interview phase, we then provide or enter the gap analysis phase where we put all these information together and compare the status quo with the requirements of the CRA, and simply look at findings where we can see that there is a gap. And in our report that we provide afterwards, it is not only important to, or it's not important to us to just produce another piece of paper. For us, it is important that we provide you with information and a real structured orientation in order to have clarity about what you need to do next. So we provide you with suggestions and with a roadmap. And with this combination, we are achieving, or we are targeting, focusing on our goal to make you compliant. So this is basically the readiness assessment. And yeah, that is a first approach, or first, let's say, starting point for you as an affected company in order to become compliant and fulfill the requirements of any regulation that is right now in force and will be in force in the future. So let's take a quick glance at the key takeaways. We have non-compliance hurts. You need to be compliant, otherwise you will be driven out of the market. RED makes the first step. It's the first milestone, and it targets radio equipment and has already harmonized standards published for it. CRA is the next step. It will be important in September 2026 and December 2027. And it targets all products with digital elements, so a much broader approach. And it is a mix of technical and organizational measures where the harmonized standards are still in progress and coming. What is your goal? Your goal is a CE label, and you need to have an action plan in order to start your compliance journey. And ONEKEY is your partner for confidence and clarity when it comes to that. The bottom line is that cybersecurity is no longer optional, and it's your ticket to market access. Thank you very much. And now we can go through the questions. Patrick, do we have some questions?
Yes, of course. We have a couple of questions right now. And so let me start with the first one.
Yes.
So from Yuko Nikula, what is your view does CRA mandate secure boot to all digital elements, or do you see lighter alternatives? So it's about secure boot.
Yeah, so this is not easy to answer since we don't have the harmonized standards yet. The CRA itself does not pose any measures or any real concrete suggestions. The question is very good, and it's also very, very already very thoughtful about the solution. And I'm pretty sure that this will be a solution for a lot of requirements of the CRA, for example, since it covers many aspects. But it's hard to say right now. We can say that for sure in October 2027.
Okay. So from Alex Lay, is a CRA at the company level or the product level? For example, vulnerability disclosure belongs to the company level in terms of managing and disclosing vulnerabilities as well as establishing related mechanisms rather than being tied to a specific product.
Yeah, so it's both. And that's what I meant with thank you for that question. It's a very good question, and it shows that it is not enough just to think in technical solutions or technical measures, like the EN 18031, for example, requires. The CRA will require both technical measures, but also organizational measures and processes, like you just described. And there are on a company level, at least that's the suggestion, because it takes synergy effects into account. For example, when all the departments are doing the same procedures and processes, and not everyone at its own. But they are also on a product level, so it will be covered by both, which you also see in the harmonized standards categories of harmonized, which are across all the products, and vertical horizontal, harmonized standards horizontally, and harmonized standards vertically, which are targeting products as very specific products.
Okay. Thank you very much. So next question, simply put in the future, should we tell customers that our company has passed the CRA assessment, or should we say that our company's products have passed the CRA?
Yeah, thank you for that question. That is a common misconception. The CRA, as well as the RED, targets products, not companies. So you, as a manufacturer or a distributor, have to make sure that the product you are selling is compliant. And you do that by declaring it conform with the EU Declaration of Conformity. So therefore, with that official document, which it is, which needs to be signed by a responsible person. With this document, you declare that your product is conform, and that is basically the way that you inform your customers that your product is compliant and following the CRA requirements.
Thank you very much. So we have another question from Yuko Nikula. Does free update and patch management apply also to customized products intended to single customers only?
Thank you. That is a very specific question. One that I haven't heard so far, to be honest. It is very interesting. And I think, yes, it also applies to those, except if you, as far as I know, you can have in contracts with the customer, you can have certain dismiss of obligations, basically, where you have written down that those updates and patch management requirements do not apply to this product. There is a possibility to get out of this requirement, so to say. But I would have to make sure if this is really the case by checking the CRA exactly. So take this answer for now with a grain of salt, please.
Wonderful. So we have a next question from Arunambi. Does CRA applies to B2B products that does not need CE marking?
Yes. CRA applies to all kind of products. It's no matter if it is a B2B or B2C product. It is not described in any kind that there is a distinguishment. It is only about products with digital elements. So any product, also machines or sensors, are affected by the CRA.
Okay, wonderful. Thanks. So next question from Sönke. What are the products which fall under importance class 2?
For example, critical, or not critical, we have a good category for critical products, but there are some rather more important or more centralized products which are, if they get compromised, then you already have a very central vector of attack. And if you take those, for example, as I think firewalls are also in that category, but I'm not sure if they are not already in the sphere of critical components. I could look it up now in order. Okay, here I have it. Hypervisors, for example, firewalls, as I said, they are class 2 products. Microprocessors, temper-resistant microprocessors, and temper-resistant microcontrollers. So all those products that are in a very central role of securing other areas, networks, domains, and therefore they are in the importance class 2.
Okay. Thanks. So we have some comments and another question from Vasilius. A technical part. So where should encryption, decryption keys be stored?
Yeah, this is a question which I have to deter to my colleagues, unfortunately, since this is a very technical question and my background is very organizational. So unfortunately, I cannot answer this with certainty, and it would be unprofessional to answer this now from the back of my mind. So I would ask to write this question as an email again in order to be answered by our technical colleagues. I'm sorry to disappoint you here.
Yeah, we will take care of it afterwards. Okay, we have a German question from Stefan. It's about legacy products. If the CRA covers legacy products by the,
Yeah, and if it's possible to, if they are not state of the art, and if they are, because they are technically limited, are also not being able to be made compliant. So I see two parts in this question. Thank you for that question. Legacy products are in that way affected by the CRA that if they become, if they get updates or they are being changed, you will have to make sure that they are also CRA compliant. If this question focuses on that legacy products being produced and put on the market, this is not possible after the CRA comes into force. So everything put on the market and being sold needs to fulfill the CRA requirements, because according to the Blue Guide, it's very serial number specific product meant with the CRA requirements. And if it's limited in the possibilities to make them compliant, there need to be some kind of mitigation in order to be according to the cyber risks which are posed or threatening the product. There need to be some mitigation in order to make sure that it is compliant.
Okay, thank you, Philip. So that's it for now. We have no further questions. So that would be just on time, I would say.
Yes.
Okay. We have another question. Let me check. So from Achim, will be EN 18032 standard a vertical standard for CRA, or is it independently from it? Have we to use EN 18032 additionally to other vertical standard for the main function of a device?
Thank you. That is a very specific question which cannot be answered right now, unfortunately, because the vertical standards or the harmonized standards itself are not out yet. They are in progress. They have not been published. And to my latest info, it is not even clear the naming of those. I mean, the code of those standards is not yet provided. So it is would be a look into the crystal ball in order to answer this. I could imagine that for radio equipment, for example, it is still said that EN 18031 needs to be fulfilled, but this will be then also covered if you use CRA harmonized standards. There is, to my knowledge, no vertical standard planned for radio equipment in the CRA because it's already covered by Radio Equipment Directive, and the vertical standards in the CRA really focus on certain products like password managers, browsers, and ZM systems, all these kind of products. So it's not about generic radio equipment. It's more or less like a very specific product, which the vertical standard then focuses on.
Thanks, Philip. So I don't see any more questions right now. So, okay. If there are no more questions, I would say let's announce the date for the next ONEKEY seminar. It's on the 23rd October, and it's about from detection to decision, smarter vulnerability management with ONEKEY. So we're looking forward to see you again. Philip, thank you again. And thanks for having us, and thanks for taking the time for our seminar. So see you next time, and bye-bye.
Thank you very much for your attention. See you next time.
Bye.